In this video, we're going to talk about the variable, or another name for it is the unknown. They're interchangeable, and the way we interact with them mathematically, technically, is pretty much exactly the same, but they do have a slightly different meaning, so it can be confusing. So I just want to go through that and clarify in this little mini lesson what the difference is. Well, let's start with the unknown. If we look at the algebraic equation 3x plus 7 equals 13. In that case, x is what we're talking about. It's the unknown, it's the variable. And in this case, it's more of an unknown because the algebraic equation is a problem we're going to have to solve, and we're going to find out what the value of x is. But until we find out the value of x, it's currently unknown. Now, we won't get to solving equations for a bit. If you're just at this level, it'll be a while before you get to solving equations, so we'll move quickly past that. We will work soon with expressions that have variables or unknowns in them. But for now, let's switch to the variable now, because that's actually the more interesting and the more useful aspect of the letter in math, and that's the variable. And the reason it's called a variable is because the value of it can vary. So just let's use a really simple example to kind of explain this. And I've taught math for a long time, and I've always started with very simple examples. Because if you're like me, and I don't mean to make you feel like I think you're not capable of learning math, that's not the case. But if you're like me, then I need things in very basic, simple terms so that I can grasp it, and then I can get complex with it. But I need it in a very simple, presented in a really simple way first, so that I understand. So let's use a really simple scenario, and the scenario is this: you have a part-time job, and you're going to get paid $10 per hour. So $10 is your pay, and your part-time job, well, forget the hours for now. It's not really that important in this. We know it's $10 per hour, so you get paid $10 per hour. What we don't know is how many hours. Right now, that's unknown, and it's also variable. So let's say we let the letter H represent the number of hours that you're going to work in a given amount of time. Sometimes it's weekly, sometimes you get paid bi-weekly, sometimes you get paid monthly. For this scenario, let's just pretend you get paid every week, which would be actually ideal and awesome. Then you get cash money in your pocket at the end of every week. So 10H represents the amount of money you'll make at the end of a week. So 10, when they're written side by side like that, that means we multiply. And you know intuitively that if you make $10 per hour, if you work 2 hours, you make $20. If you work 3 hours, you make $30, and you multiply that to get the result. That's pretty intuitive. You don't really need an expression or anything like that to help you manage that. I know that, but again, we're just showing you how a variable works in a really simple way. And then, as all things happen in math, it'll get complex soon enough. But we want you to understand what's going on. So this is telling a story. 10 times H. This is saying for every hour I work, I multiply it by 10, and that's the amount of money I have at the end of the week. Now, the reason this could vary is because when you're young and you work, sometimes your work schedule varies. You may not get the same number of hours every week if you work hourly. So let's say in week 1 you get 5 hours. So now I can substitute for that variable or that unknown, and 10 times 5 we know is 50. And then let's say the week 2 you have you get 12 hours in. Better week. So now we can substitute 12 in for hours. See how it varied? It was 5, it's 12, so it varies. Now we make $120 an hour. And then week 3, 15, it doesn't really matter. We can keep going for a long time. You get $15 an hour in week 3, so we substitute number of hours 15, which has varied all 3 weeks now. And in week 3, we get $150. So this expression with the unknown helps us to determine what the outcome's going to be. And I know what you're saying. You don't need this to figure your weekly income at your job, because you can do that on your own. I know. I'm just showing you a simple way that a variable and a variable expression works, and eventually we'll get to equations in the same light, so that you see what that letter is for. It's a holder. It's for something we don't know right now, but we may know later, or we may use it to predict information later. Maybe I might say I might be using it I might decide to use it, say I want to buy a car. And if I buy this car, my payment's $250 a month. That'd be a pretty cheap car. So I might use this expression to figure out, well, how many hours do I need to work in a week in order to be able to make my car payment? So it becomes more useful then perhaps than what we've just talked about. At any rate, that's what a variable is. That's what it's for. That's how it can be useful. Math gets more complex quickly, like I said. One little thing we could add to this scenario that would make it a tiny bit more complex, which may then drive home the point of the need for some variable expression or some way to capture this information, is say at the end of the week, my boss has determined I'm doing such a good job that at the end of each week, I'm going to start getting a $25 bonus. So now the representation of my pay has changed. I get $10 per hour plus 25 for every week that I work. And it can get way more complex than that. If you actually look at pay, there's amount of money they take out. This really is a very complex percentage, which turns out to be a really complex expression, or eventually it's actually a function, which we'll get to eventually in this course. So variable, unknown, it's the letter and the mess of stuff that you're dealing with. Now you know.